Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at gcnlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set, cocked, locked? Here we go. Your dial set correctly to USA Prepares. Thank you for being in class with us. Jason is engineering the broadcast in Minnesota. I'm Vincent Finelli. If you'd like to call us, here's the number, 866-582-9933. 866-582-9933. Telephone listen line, 605-477-3249. Guineith Isaacs is with us live in Australia. Welcome, Guineith.
Hello, Vincent. How are you this morning?
Very well, and I was thinking about Notre Dame in Paris and what happened, and you've got some thoughts on that, don't you?
I absolutely do. But just before I go into that, okay, I would like to do a plug for the Gentleman of Fortune's weekly news. This is actually one of the main stories in the Gentleman of Fortune's weekly news this week, and all the details are in there. If you want to go and subscribe to it, go and do that. You'll find the best. You'll find information in that newsletter that you will not get anywhere else, because I'm getting insights into stuff that's happening all over the world. Isn't that right, Vincent?
Well, your theory about Notre Dame is absolutely brilliant, and I know you're going to share that.
And I have
yes,
not
it is.
heard it
yes, it
anywhere
is.
else.
And I've got some exclamation points for it when you do decide to tell us.
That's right.
So how do we get to your publication that's received via email, The Gentleman of Fortune? How do we get it?
Okay. What you need to do is go to USA Prepares, and the link that will take you to the site that hosts my newsletter is on my on my little profile that I have on the USA Prepares website. Alternatively, you can get in touch with me on Facebook. And, just go to Facebook and look up Guineith Isaacs, and you'll find me. And you'll know that you've got me because my page is the one with the highwayman at the top. So that's been a bit of a theme of study for the last little while. I'm actually relying on this for my income at the moment, okay, on the newsletter, and also on book sales and that sort of thing. I would love for people to go and subscribe to my newsletter. If you love my work, this is actually how I'm supporting myself. Okay, and so if you love my work, please go and subscribe to the newsletter, because the more subscribers that I have, the easier life is for me. Because to be perfectly honest, life around here has been really financially tight for a long, long time. And because I'm not on unemployment benefits, I don't want to go on unemployment benefits because, and actually, according to the Australian law, I'm actually not eligible for unemployment benefits, okay, because I generate some of my own income. And if you do that, then you count it as being self-employed. And we've got a 25% unemployment rate around here. I don't have a motor vehicle, and even if I did have a motor vehicle, Well, I do, but it doesn't work. And, you know, if I went out driving and the local blue team saw me out and about driving, they would target me. They hate me because I expose their sex racketeering. And so for me to just go out and get a job is not really an option. So that's why I have to do other things to generate my own income, you know. So if you love my work, please go and subscribe to my newsletter. You will not regret it. It's absolutely great. You get information that you will not get anywhere else, including this little gem. This is a freebie for all of you guys because it's so important. The fact that that fire started at the base of the spire of the Notre Dame Cathedral. What have we been talking about for the last, I don't know how long, the last month or two, about churches that have been putting Wi-Fi and cell phone antennas inside their church spires, inside their steeples. Isn't that right, Vincent?
We've been talking about churches in England with the blessing of the Crown putting Wi-Fi and cellular antenna equipment, transmitters, receivers, and antennae in the spires, concealed from view, concealed from your knowledge, by approved by the Crown. Yes, as a revenue generator for the Crown. Yes, we have. It's been over a year that we've been talking about it. And what you're alluding to is equipment in Notre Dame under the roof that could have been involved in this. Is that right?
That's right. Now, I've got no evidence that there was a cell tower in there or that one was being installed in there. This is hypothesis and this is speculation. Okay, I need to point this out. But I put 2 and 2 together and I got 4. Because this is a place, you've got to understand, this particular spot was about the most difficult spot for any individual to get to in the whole building. It's 150 feet up in the air, right in the middle of the roof cavity. Okay, so it's not just somewhere that you would accidentally come across and you know say, oops, there we go, oh, blowtorch, oops, there we go, oh, grinder sparks landed in a mouse nest. That would not happen because it's not an area that the workmen would have been frequenting. But it is an area, I believe, that the Catholic Church in France would have been looking across the English Channel at the English Christians, so-called Christians, I'm sorry if there's anyone from the Church of England, but, you know, just the money grubbingness is, I don't know if that's even a word. They're so money grubbing. You know, they're poisoning their whole congregation for the sake of filthy lucre. And that's not a very Christian attitude. They were looking across the English Channel, seeing what the English were doing, and saying, wee, this is something we can do to get more money. You know, the Notre Dame Cathedral was in desperate need of money because it was in desperate need of a renovation. And now it's really in need of a renovation. And it'll never get renovated now. You know, and I go into more detail in the newsletter. This is not an ordinary fire. Okay? Each one of these roof beams was the size of a tree, and not just any old tree, 100 and hundreds of years old tree. every one of those roof beams. You don't just catch one of these sorts of beams on fire with a little bit of a, oops, well, we missed the blowtorch, thing, or oops, we missed a few sparks from the grinder and they landed in a mouse nest. Well, yes, that could create a fire, given time, that the sparks would land in the mouse nest or a pile of dust or whatever, and they'd smolder for hours. They'd smolder for maybe 6 or 8, 12 hours, and then they'd burst into flames, and then the flames would burn on top of the oak beam, which is the size of a full hundreds and hundreds of years old tree, for maybe a day, 2, 3 days, before it makes a hole in the beam and begins to spread. That's a really, really slow spreading fire. Okay? This fire, the whole building was destroyed within 63 minutes. That's not a fire that has come from a blowtorch. That's not a fire that's come from some grinder sparks or whatever it is where they're saying it was an accident because of the renovation. Okay? And it's really interesting that they've jumped to this conclusion of that it's because of an accident, because of the renovation, before they've done any forensic investigation of the site. The site's not even cooled down. You can't even get into that building yet, because that fire was burning so hot, it was just a pool of molten lead in the bottom of there. And I've included photos in the Gentleman of Fortune's weekly news where somebody put a drone up. Don't you just love this modern technology? And they did a photograph from a drone, and all you can see is like a pool of lava in the bottom of the cathedral. That's not lava. That's red hot molten lead from the roof. Somebody put a cell phone antenna, in my humble opinion, in the spire and had it facing downwards, bouncing radiation into the church, turned the whole church into a gigantic microwave oven because the roof of the church was made from...
Hold that thought. We'll be right back. Guineith Isaacs is with us. Guineith, you were talking about this molten pool of lead at the base of the cathedral. Please continue.
Yeah, that molten, pool of lead at the bottom of the cathedral, it came from the roof that caved in, okay? The roof was made of 250 tons of lead sheeting. Now, what happens if you put a microwave antenna, face it inwards, and have the top covering of your structure being a 250-ton sheet of lead? What's that called, Vincent?
Well, I believe you're talking about a parabolic reflector, or a reflector that's similar to a parabola.
Yeah.
And, class, here's what we're talking about. We're talking about this dome.
Oven.
We're talking about this dome acting as a reflector. Now, even, let's just talk about antenna theory for a little bit.
It was parabolic, wasn't it?
Yes.
I was just thinking it's like a gigantic microwave oven.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with the concentrator being the parabolic reflector. So let's take a couple minutes and talk a little bit about antenna and antenna theory.
Yeah.
So, class, you remember those 12 and 10-foot satellite antennas of the 1980s, okay? What they were is they were a large antenna that would capture a small amount of signal. We'll call it signal. Also, you can say microwave radiation. It would capture that, and it would focus it on a very small point, which was at the feed horn of the antenna. That would be sticking out in front of the antenna. So it's kind of like if you took a magnifying glass and you had a leaf, a brown leaf, and you held that magnifying glass toward the sun, captured all the sun's radiation that the surface of the glass could capture, and focus it on a tiny point, and the heat of that tiny point would burn a hole in the leaf, actually set it on fire, or you could set paper on fire. It's really hot, well over 500 degrees. Well, that's the idea of a parabolic reflector antenna, like a satellite antenna, even like the dish antennas and the that are on the roofs and to receive satellite television programming, or Hughes satellites. But the idea is, if you look at these antennas, some of them may appear to be plastic. Well, they're plastic on the exterior surface. On the interior surface, they're metal. They may be a very fine mesh screen, or they may be spray painted with a metallic spray, but they are a metal reflector. You just may not see the metal in these antennas. But you can on the dish type antennas for television reception, satellite television reception. You know that they're made out of a metal dish. Well, the lead in the roof is a reflector. So depending on where these, if there were antennas, depending on where they were, that dome would reflect that electromagnetic radiation, that microwave radiation, and could focus it on one of these old pieces of wood that are 800 years old, well dried out, okay, or dust, or whatever happens to be up there to catch fire easily. That's entirely possible. Now, there's another thing, that they were doing a renovation there, and that renovation was done by contractors.
The 5G.
That could be
installing the 5G and just turned it on for the first time. And
or left it on overnight.
Downwards. Yeah, or left it on. It happened around about closing time for the facility.
Mm-hmm.
If they had turned on the 5G for the first time, just installed it, brand new, and say, yeah, this is going to be a wonderful thing because all of our parishioners can now watch high-speed internet in the middle of the catechism on their cell phones.
So here's the next question.
Disgusting.
Here's the next question, Guineith. So who owns the cathedral? Well, under the 1905 law on the separation of church and state, Notre Dame of Paris is one of the 70 churches that was built in Paris before the year of the law of separation of church and state. It's owned by the French state. And the French state...
You're going to be kidding me.
No, I'm not. And the French state self-insured it. It was self-insured by the French. We'll be right back. We're talking with Guineith Isaacs about the cathedral at Notre Dame in Paris. And the cathedral is one of the 70 churches that was built in Paris before 1905. And that's when the law was enacted separating church and state. So this is a state-owned building. Now, the Catholic Church is the designated beneficiary of this building. So they have the right to use it exclusively in perpetuity for their religious purposes. Now, that doesn't mean that the state is going to pay for the employees and the building, heating and cleaning and those kinds of things. Now, the archdiocese is responsible for paying for the employees and the security and the heating and the cleaning. But the archdiocese does not receive subsidies from the state. So they get to use it. What a racket, right? They get to use this magnificent building. But the building was self-insured by the state, excepting contractors who were working on the building. They had to maintain their own insurance. Now, if you heard the top of the hour news, we're talking about the renovations and the rebuilding of the damaged part running up to $1 billion. That's with a B. Now, what insurance company is going to insure a contractor in the amount of $1 billion. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think it did happen. So now they're looking for donations to rebuild. Now, how could this happen? You really have to think that
human stupidity.
Where did I hear that before?
This building, okay, survived the French Revolution. It survived World War I and World War II. It survived every major upheaval that Paris has had for 850 years. Okay? It survived just about falling in on itself during the process of construction. That's why they had to put the flying buttresses on the outside of it. Those wonderful stone arches that they look so fragile, and yet they're architecturally phenomenally strong. The whole building was a wonder of the world, with just how it was constructed. There's a documentary on YouTube on it if anyone wants to watch it, and it's just mind blowing. These people installed, in my humble opinion, okay. There's no way that anyone's ever going to admit to this. But this is my Sherlock Holmes hat on here. Somebody installed some sort of microwave antenna, either 5G, Wi-Fi, whatever. Okay, even a regular cell antenna would do it. Pointing inwards, okay, at the top, and you're right. It's in the middle of a dome. I didn't pick that up. But you're absolutely right. I just picked up, mate, this is 250 tons of lead roof. It's a gigantic microwave oven. And it is a gigantic microwave oven, but it's not only that. It's a gigantic microwave oven with a parabolic antenna in the middle of it. And somebody installed the 5G microwave antenna there and switched the blooming thing on. What did they think was going to happen? The whole church is full of gold leaf. Now, what happens if you put gold leaf in a microwave oven? Sparks. That even in and of itself, the gold and the silver implements, and then somebody turned it on. It's just absolutely clueless beyond comprehension. And I don't know, it doesn't say anywhere in the press if the spire was actually lead-lined or had lead roofing on it, or whether it was just slate-roofed. That I don't know that. But if to have that much lead, I mean, it's an enormous amount of lead. You're talking about 250 tons of lead, 250 tons. A ton. It's a fifth of an inch thick lead sheet.
Yeah, and the reason that lead was used back then is because it's malleable. Malleable means you can hammer it into thin sheets. Now, the thickness of the sheet is not so important as the property that lead has to be hammered into thin sheets. So that's why they could. That's why they could make it the shape that they want. They could make it into that dome shape just by a bunch of craftsmen up there, just tapping with a hammer. That's what they do. Yeah. Now we have machines that can do that right now. We have presses that can heavy presses, light presses, and we can make that. But this was built by hand.
By craftsmen.
We didn't have
with hand tools.
Right.
Hand tools.
And where are we going to get the right? And where are we going to get that craftsman to rebuild it? And how about those trees that were 400 years old? Where are they going to find 400-year-old trees today? They're
13,000 of them. 13,000.
13,000. 13,000 400-year-old
400-year-old trees.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It's not doable.
Straight and
no,
full.
what they'd have to do they'd have to make it out of some laminate. To replace those timbers, they would have to make them out of a laminate. They'd shave currant trees and glue them together like plywood, or glue lambs, as they're called. Beams made out of thin slivers of wood glued to other thin slivers of wood glued to other thin slivers, like plywood, with a very strong glue under tremendous pressure in a press to keep it all tight, and then it can be shaped into the final product and cut with current saws. But yeah, that's what we're talking about. That's what it would take to do this, in my opinion.
And
now, the reason I knew a little bit about satellite communications technology and parabolic reflectors is because almost 4 decades ago, actually 3.9 decades ago, I was a founder of a corporation that designed and manufactured satellite communications equipment. That's how come I know a little bit about it. And that's why I mentioned the parabolic reflector.
You've got to ask.
Because we used to experiment with this.
In 850 years' time, what's the condition of the glue light going to be on those glue lamb beams in 850 years?
Yeah, and is mold going to like it?
Yeah, I don't think that it's going to be such a good answer.
No, I don't think so either.
You'll never replace the craftsmanship. What about the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of stained glass windows? I don't think there's even that many stained glass artists in the world that could all gather together in Paris and work. You would have to have them working for decades. Every stained glass artist on earth would have to go to Paris and, work for decades just building new stained glass windows, because those beautiful roses at the front, the rose-shaped stained glass windows that were at the front, they were 350 feet in diameter. That is mind-blowing, and made up with hundreds and hundreds of individual little panels. And that's not even the side windows of the cathedral. That's just the 3 main roses at the front. It was a marvel of architecture. And what about the carvings, the stone carvings? You can't just sandblast.
Let's go back to the glass. Let's go back to the glass for just a second. In order to color glass, you have to add certain materials, metals usually. And if you've ever seen rose-colored glass, gold is added to glass to make it rose-colored. So now we're talking about rare earth metals used to color the glass. Where is that going to come from? Who knows how to do that today? Who knows? And how do you float?
Technology.
Right. How do you float liquid glass? By the way, glass is always a liquid. Even when it's on your window, it's considered a liquid. It appears to be a solid, but it's a very, very, very slow-moving liquid. So where do we get the float table, if you will, to float glass this size to make it? Where? Oh, I know. China. That's where we get it. We'll get it from China.
Oh, my gosh.
Well, if you think about it, we don't use much glass anymore. We've replaced most of the glass in most of the containers that we use for food with plastic. Glass is pretty much done. Rarely you can find beer. Well, you can find beer in glass, but mostly it's aluminum cans. You can find some specialty sodas in glass in the 4-packs because it's too expensive for a 6-pack of glass bottles of these sodas. So I guess the bottom line is
a Venetian glass industry. Okay, that's where the glass industry started. Was in Venice, and Venice comparatively not that far from Paris. I mean, it's maybe a few hundred kilometres from Paris. And you do have still a Venetian glass industry. But we're talking about, at the most, maybe a few hundred craftsmen who still make glass in the old way in Venice. And, although Venice has its own problems, and, they might need somewhere new to stay. Oh, I've got a good idea. Let's move them all to Paris.
There you go. And we'll be right back with Guineith Isaacs live in Australia. Guineith and I are talking about the cathedral at Notre Dame. And here's something to think about, class. We're talking about 250 tons of lead at the base of the cathedral that melted. Well, lead is toxic. The fumes, the smoke from the fire were all toxic. And there were people all around the area breathing this toxic smoke. And we talked about colors of glass. Well, if silver is added to glass, it would tend to have an orange or a red or a yellow look to it. If iron oxide is added to glass, it has a light green tint. And what about lead crystal? Okay, so lead crystal is that type of glass that's manufactured with lead into wine goblets. And how do you tell if a wine goblet is
clear?
Very clear, very clear. And if you tap it, it will have a ring to it. And I'm going to tap the rim of a wine goblet, lead glass wine goblet, with a Bic plastic pen. Here it is. That's the sound of a wine goblet being tapped with a plastic Bic pen. So if you want to know if you have leaded crystal, it's heavier, it's very clear, and I'm not so sure it's even safe to drink out of, because lead is linked with disorders of the blood. It can have a negative impact on our nervous system, and I know that lead can leach out of the glass, because the content of lead crystal glass can be as much as 33%. It's an enormous percentage. Yeah. So, Guineith, were you able to hear that ring from that glass that I just tapped?
I was. That was absolutely beautiful. And my dad was an antiques collector, and he used to have an absolutely marvelous crystal collection. One day when I'm sort of a bit more financial, I am going to start buying lead crystal, because not to drink out of, but because it's just so beautiful. And the other way that you can tell is it tends to have a rainbow refraction through it. So when light shines into it, it tends to refract out in a rainbow, because the crystalline structure of the glass is so perfect that it does that, and there's not many things that will do that with. It's beautiful, it really is, and people, they make little dinner bells out of it, and this sort of thing. And but you're right. I don't know how safe it would be to actually drink out of or eat out of, but people have been doing so for hundreds of years, and whether they should or not, well, that's up to them. But I'm glad that you pointed that out to me. I'm not going to be so keen to actually drink out of a lead wine glass now.
Well, I inherited these from my parents, and that was a different era, a completely different era. Back when my mom bought these, they were affordable. Now I don't know, but they, we don't use them. They're beautiful to look at, as you said. And here's an interesting thing. As you were mentioning that, I held the glass, this wine glass or goblet, up to the sun, and It sparkles like the finest diamond. I mean, the edges literally sparkle in the light.
Rainbows.
Bright white light,
Yep.
rainbow light. Absolutely magnificent. And that's something, that's something that's lost. We don't even consider the art of a glass anymore. It's just a glass. It's amazing how far we have fallen in society with, I guess, social media, I guess with cell phones, I guess with instant, I guess with me now. We have really fallen far. We've lost the desire to take the time to enjoy life. Now it's fast, fast, fast. We'll be right back. Guineith Isaacs and I will return right after top of the hour and news and commercial. Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Hour number 2 of USA Prepares. Guineith Isaacs is with us live in Australia. And I did a little bit of research, and there are very few broadcasts that have, in the United States, with regular correspondence from outside the United States. USA Prepares is one of those, with Guineith Isaacs in Australia. Guineith, I'm gonna ring 2 glasses. Now, these are wine glasses. The first one I'm going to ring is just an ordinary American wine glass, about the same capacity as the next one I'm going to tap and ring into the microphone. Both of these have round bases. They are roughly the same size in terms of capacity. The first one will be just a common wine glass, with regular clear glass. The next one is the leaded glass, and I just want you to hear the difference. I tried this during the break, and it was quite astounding. So here's the first one. This is just common glass. Okay. Now the next one is the leaded crystal wine goblet. Dramatic difference, wouldn't you say?
I would say so. Yeah.
So
and also,
that's what happens.
See it, you would notice a difference in the look of the glass if you put them side by side.
Yep. The leaded crystal appears to be more clear. You can see through it a lot better, less opaque, more pure, believe it or not. That's how it looks to me. So I just wanted to share that with you. But I wanted to share something else. This is kind of bothering me. This is just a common thread that is running through our lives in many, many respects. When something goes wrong, we have to call somebody. So typically, if a person has a dishwasher and it fails, they got a new one, they got to call a guy. When I say guy, I don't mean necessarily a guy, male. I mean a person.
Whatever.
A repair person. Right? If you have a washing machine, same thing. Car won't start in your driveway, same thing. And so you're now at the mercy of companies that have expertise in the products that they've made that are so complicated that you can no longer fix them yourself. And I'm going to give you an example, an extremely frustrating example. I've been working on a car. I've been having a lot of difficulty getting this car to operate. It's a used car. And it goes into limp mode, L-I-M-P mode. And what that means is reduced horsepower, reduced RPM, reduced throttle response. So all of a sudden, the car seems to think something is wrong, and it says, you know what? I'm not going to let you have full access to all of the car's potential. We are going to reduce it to the point where it just will make it home. So if you go to step on the accelerator, you get 1/4 of the throttle response, 1/4 of the RPM potential, 1/4 of everything. It won't even shift into top gear. You're limited to a maximum miles per hour of maybe 50. So I was working on this car, and the car would run fine, and it would go into limp mode. And I was trying to figure out, our son and I were working on it for 3 weeks. It would go into limp mode, and we thought, okay, maybe it's our driveway. Maybe it's because our driveway is a gravel driveway. Maybe it's the bumps. It would go into limp mode just going down the driveway, less than 1/4 of a mile or less than 1/3 of a mile. And to get it out of limp mode, it was real easy. All you do is shut off the engine and restart it, and you're good until it goes into limp mode again. And we took it on a paved road, and it was fine for like 20 miles, then it went into limp mode. So we have no idea when it's going to happen. We know it's going to happen, we just don't know when. You can be in traffic, you can be in the city, you can be on the highways and byways. All of a sudden, the light comes on the dashboard, and then the accelerator becomes really hard to press. It's 4 times harder to press than it was. And this happens to be a Mercedes.
Okay.
So finally.
Now, what happens if that happens when you're on the motorway and you've got an 18-wheeler that's like 6 feet from your back bumper?
Well, I think there'll be a marriage.
Hypothetically.
I think there could be a marriage.
Not a happy one.
Right.
Because that's what 18-wheelers do around here. They come up and they sit on your back bumper. Mm-hmm. I don't know if they do that in America.
Well,
I do it here, and they'll be going at 100 kilometres an hour, so that's 80 miles an hour, at the speed limit, and they come up behind you, and they just sit there, like literally just a few feet from your back bumper.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's what they do here, too. I'm not sure if the Australians learned it from the Americans or vice versa, but it happens here, too. So out of extreme frustration, I don't give up on things. I'm the guy who, when I went to the university, I would take a class that was really, really hard. And what most people would do is they would drop the class in the first week or two, so it wouldn't affect their grades. Not me. I would stick it out and get a lousy grade because I would not give up. Well, just like this vehicle, I didn't give up until I got to the point where I was at a time constraint. So my son and I called the Mercedes dealer, and they said, look, we're the only ones that have the equipment to diagnose this problem. We're the only ones. You won't be able to do it. So I said, what will this cost? And they said between $150 and $200 to diagnose it. I said, okay, we'll be there. We set up the appointment.
Oh, my gosh.
We made it, and 2 hours later, after looking at it for 2 hours, I said, you'll put your top guy on it? Yep. He's been with us for years. He's a master mechanic for 23 years. And he's been there about 35 years. So 35-year experienced guy. He's been trained on this particular model before it was released to the United States. He's been trained on it, and he's a Mercedes master mechanic. After 2 hours, the service guy came back, and he said, I don't have good news for you. So he went into his office, and he said, we don't know what it is. We don't know what it is.
Me.
I'm not kidding. So the top guy has no idea what it is, literally. And I said, are you telling me that you don't know what the problem is? You can't find it? He said, no, I'm not saying that at all. I could have sworn that's what I heard. He said, no, we can tell you what it is, but it'll cost 2 to 3 times what the vehicle is worth to tell you what the problem is. I want you to think about that. Class, think about that. Am I embellishing in any way, shape, or form? Nope. So Mercedes-Benz has no idea what's wrong with this car. Now, when we brought it to him, we spent a half an hour talking to the service guy. And we said, We have taken this apart and we've left off all the covers for you, so you don't have to reach in and take them all out again. They've all been removed. We've looked at the fuel system. We've replaced the fuel pump, the fuel filter. We've replaced the spark plugs. We've read the spark plugs. All the cylinders are firing perfectly. We've looked at the suspension system. We've looked at the wiring system. Here is everything that we have found. And we told him in detail to save him all kinds of time. And he said they have the diagnostic equipment to determine what this is. And only they have it. And they couldn't figure it out. Now, this particular vehicle does not have the onboard diagnostics because it was made prior to 1994. But Mercedes can't fix it. Now, why am I telling you this? For several reasons. We have a friend of a friend. We'll call him a friend of the family. And he bought a new Dodge truck. He's very proud of it. And he's a farmer. And now it's at the dealership. They're trying to figure out what's wrong with the diesel engine because it's not running right. This is a brand new vehicle. Brand new. It's not like me where I buy used vehicles. It's brand new. And the dealer can't figure it out. It's in limp mode.
You know what I
LIMP.
think this might be, Vincent? That these vehicles have actually been designed by AI. And they run using artificial intelligence AI systems. And the AI is just not talking to us humans anymore.
Well, let me continue. Well, let's continue down this path. So I bought a 2000 many years ago, probably 5 years ago, a Mercedes E430. It's a E stands for executive class, but don't think that that's this very large vehicle. It's a midsize Mercedes-Benz. Has a little V8 in it, 4.3 liter V8. American engines like Chevrolet would put a 4.3 liter V6. So this is a V8, but it's a small displacement per cylinder. And I was in the vehicle in the evening with a broadcaster who was blind. And he bumped into my coffee cup and knocked my coffee cup over. And it spilled down the center console where the shift mechanism is. I'll tell you a little bit more about this when we come back. Interesting story. You're going to learn a lot with this one little story. Guineith Isaacs is with us. We're talking about we've passed the point of no return with technology. So I was traveling out of state with another broadcaster, and it was, let's say 10 o'clock at night. And we were going to a place we're staying that night. And he was blind, and he was talking, and he knocked over my coffee cup. Now, this was a coffee cup that came from one of those fast food joints, and it had a plastic lid. And what I would do is I'd tear out a little hole in the plastic lid, half the diameter of a number 2 pencil, very small hole. And the way Mercedes has their coffee cup, or their cup holders, they don't think you should be drinking and driving. So the cup holder's an afterthought. So it sticks up as like an arm right near the gear shift control in the center console. And when he was talking with his hands, he knocked over the cup and didn't know it, and the coffee slowly spilled down the console, and the car thought it had been stolen. The lights went off, all the headlights, the tail lights, all the lights were blinking on the exterior of the car.
Gosh.
The horn went off. This thing thought it was being kidnapped.
Sabotaged.
Yeah. So I called 1-800-4-MERCEDES. Back then I had a cell phone. This was many years ago. And they said, well, what's the vehicle? Where are you? I said, I don't know. I'm in Illinois somewhere. I don't know where I am. It's dark. And they said, what's the vehicle identification number? So I read that to the gal on the phone at 1-800-4-MERCEDES. She told me where I was.
Exactly where you were, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
She said, well, you're at the corner of Corvette Lane and some other road. Wow. And she said, well,
Oh, my gosh.
What's happened? She knew what happened.
Scary.
Well, she knew what happened to the car. She said, well, you're not going to be able to drive this. You're going to have it towed. And I said, well, what's this job going to cost? She said about $2,000 because the transmission control computer is at the base of the shift lever. So Mercedes puts a computer down there.
This must be a problem that occurs on a fairly regular basis for them.
Right.
With that model of car.
Right. Well, actually, it's not just that model. Many Mercedes have a similar design with the transmission control computer at the base of the shift.
Directly beneath the coffee cup holder.
Yeah. Yeah. And it works great.
It's a place to put a computer.
Well, and I was stuck out of state. And so here's what I did. I literally took the console apart and I took out the transmission shift linkage and I found the computer and the wiring harness for it. So where I was staying, I took the computer apart on the table and took out the circuit board and washed it in the sink. I got the coffee off of it. And I dried it out with a hairdryer. And I put it back in the vehicle and it worked fine. So that was... But
save yourself $2,000.
And a tow, yeah. But if you don't know, and you're not willing to try, you're going to be stuck. So here's the whole point of where I'm going with this. So we have a problem with Mercedes cannot diagnose the vehicles. They say they can, at least this particular one. They have a design that has a massive potential failure point, which is how many people have spilled a coffee cup or a drink cup in their vehicle? I'm sure a lot of people. Because just look at the carpet and you'll see it. Well, it's a massive flaw, and you're at the mercy of whoever you call to fix this, if they can fix it. Then you have 28% of new vehicles being sold without spare tires. Now, not only do they not come with spare tires, they don't come with a jack, and they don't come with the tools. So there's no lug nut tool, lug wrench. There's no jack, and there's no tire. How's that work? Well, you just call that guy, whatever that guy is. Now, do you really think that he's going to come out with a tire for your car and a tire-changing machine on his truck that's going to match the other tires on your all-wheel drive vehicle? Because if you replace one tire, if you have a half-worn-out set of 4 tires, and you replace a blown tire with a brand new one of the same make and model, the diameter of the new tire will be larger than the other 3 remaining tires, and you will destroy your transaxle.
The balance.
You'll destroy your transaxle. Now you're looking at another couple $1,000. Why? No spare tire to rotate in the mix. Because if you have 5 tires, you can rotate them evenly and have them all work at the same size and diameter and wear. We'll be right back. So, class, I've been saying for weeks now, probably months, that we have passed the point of no return, in my opinion, with technology. Technology has been constructed that we can no longer live with, the average person, without support from these companies, these corporations, who have designed it to be so complicated that we can no longer fix it ourselves. Another example is, so I fixed that Mercedes. But how many of you would be willing to take your console apart, find the transmission control computer, take it out, and take the computer apart and wash the circuit board with its components on it in the kitchen sink and blow dry it with a hairdryer? Okay, well, now you know you can do that. But how many of you would do that without knowing that what you just heard? Okay, so
probably not many people.
Right. Now, we bought a battery bank from China. Bruce Kay and I did, and we decided to buy directly from the CIYI battery company in China. We've had them for a couple years. He has 2 defective cells, and so do I. Can't get the Chinese battery manufacturer to replace them. They will not honor their warranty. So what is our recourse? fly over to China. Can't drive there. And where are they anyway? We don't know, and we don't speak Chinese. So here's another case of we can't live with the technology because they won't support it. Next case, I bought what I considered the best inverter, the best charge controllers by a company called Schneider Electric. And we have this Schneider Electric system. It's a solar inverter. We bought the solar panels from another company. We built the array, hooked it up ourselves, did not have any company, any dealers do it. We did it here at the farm. Mrs. Finelli, our son, and I worked on it together. And the interesting thing about it is I used to be able to call and get tech support if I had a question. I've read the manuals cover to cover to cover to cover. There's thousands of pages. And now I can't get tech support on the phone. So I finally got a response asking for tech support, and I was told there's no such thing. We no longer offer it. So here's another case of a company that has, in my opinion, reneged on what they would do previously. So when you find out and you go to the website and it says tech support is this number, and you look at it and you call them before the sale and they've got tech support. You call them after the sale and they've got tech support. You literally believe that there's going to be tech support, and then they stop it. They shut it down. There's nobody to call. And I composed an email because all I get are these very short, terse responses. Do this. How do I do that? Read the manual. I've already read the manual many times. I composed an email and I deleted it because here's what I typed. I typed, "You're not being helpful. Please share this email with your supervisor. Supervisor, if you worked for me, you would have been fired yesterday." That's how frustrated I am. And it's not just me, class. I've talked with other broadcasters. We're all frustrated. We can't believe what's happening. Society is crumbling right in front of our eyes. Companies have been lying to us. They know what they're doing. They say, let's promise them this and then we'll renege. Try to get your homeowner's insurance to pay for the damage. Try to get your farm owner's insurance to pay for the damage that was caused by a storm. Just try it. See how well that works out for you. See how well it works out for you when somebody crashes into the back of your vehicle, and then what you do is you call the insurance company and they say, okay, we're going to provide a rental for you. We're gonna pay for the rental. So we had a full-size Dodge 3/4-ton turbo diesel pickup truck, and it was rear-ended by some guy that was not paying attention. So the insurance company for that guy says, we'll provide a loaner car for you, a rental, and we'll cover the cost of it. I said, what's it going to be? They said it's going to be a Chevy Cobalt. And I said, it's going to be a hatchback?
Small car.
Yeah. I said, is it going to be a hatchback? He said, I don't know.
Would that get down your driveway with all the potholes?
Yeah. Well, here's what I said. I said, okay, so if it's a hatchback, that'll probably work out. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to weld a gooseneck hitch to the roof of this Chevy Cobalt because I need to pull my trailer around with it. So if you're going to provide that Chevy Cobalt, that's what I'm going to do. He said, I'll tell you what. Let's see if we can find you a truck. That's the kind of stuff that these turkeys.
Oh my gosh! You know what are you going to do? Put hay bales in the back of your Chevy Cobalt.
Right.
To feed out to your cows. These people, They don't think. You know, they really, really do not think. They've never lived in the real world. They've never done anything. I mean, I spend a great deal of my time behind a keyboard, but I can also go out in the backyard and dig a hole. I can ride a horse. I can train my dogs. I can, do all the farm-associated stuff, plant trees, and actually plant a whole plantation of prickly pears. I've got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of prickly pear plants out there So I've planted, and in a few years' time, I'm going to have maybe 2 or 3 tons of prickly pears a year. And why would I do that? Well, have you seen the price that prickly pear juice has been selling for lately? $40 a litre. I kid you not. You go online and you look at the price of prickly pear juice. You know, how many people out there would go and think like that? I don't think people think like that anymore. What do you reckon, Vincent?
You're absolutely right. People do not think, and I refer to them as the GDP. Now, here's the question. There are people who have not been paying attention. There are people now. I've been chastised for people have been saying I've been looking down at these people as not paying attention. Yeah, I have because they're not paying attention. They have no clue.
They don't pay attention.
So how is that my fault that they're not paying attention? We're here 5 days a week, 2 hours a day, trying to teach people about what's really happening and what they can do about it and how they can make their lot in life better. But yet, people don't pay attention. So I'm now at the point where I can't help them because if I had a lifeboat and they all said, hey, we need help, they would sink the boat. There's too many of them who are not paying attention. And if they don't pay attention now, we can't help them later. So even in my own family, our outlaws, I love them dearly. And I've told them, they say, hey, if it gets bad, we're just coming to your place. Okay, that's fine. But bring everything that you need because we don't have 50 pillows. We don't have 50 toothbrushes. We don't have 50 sets of sheets. We don't have 50 beds. We don't have 50 rounds of food 3 times a day. We don't have 50 sets of clothes for each of you. That'd be one set for each, right? We don't have 50. There's no way we can provide for all these people who may not have been paying attention. I can't help them.
And do these people have cow handling skills?
Cow no. Well, I'm sure. No, I'm sure that and I'm not talking about my outlaws. I love them dearly. But how many people would know what to do with a cow? Seriously. How many people would know what to do with a horse? How many people would know how to make a field grow or fix a fence? Okay, let's put it this way. So you say, you know what, I've got some old YouTube videos stored up, and it's how to repair a fence. And we've got a generator or solar power, so we'll fire that up, and you can watch this YouTube video, and then it'll be your job to get the barbed wire and the fence stretcher and the pliers and the staples and the nails, and you go out there and you fix that fence. How many people would you trust to be able to pull that off after watching a YouTube video?
That they're not going to be able to do it because there's things that you need to know about building a fence that you cannot learn from a YouTube video. And there's only one way that you can learn how to build a fence, and that is to get out there and build a fence. And, I have done many, 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 many kilometres of fence building on this farm and also on another farm that I had. And my favourite fence material is what you would call mesh fencing in the United States. Here we call it hinge joint is one design and ring lock is another design. It's the sort where the fence wires are they're woven into each other, okay, and it comes in a big roll. It's a lot more expensive, but all the farmers around here use it. Practically nobody uses plain wire fences or barbed wire fences. They all use the hinge joint or the ring lock fences because you roll it out and you tack it up and you tension it and that's it. But, how can you know how to do that and have it looking really good unless you've done it?
It's impossible. It's impossible.
You can't
and the
do
proof, right? You have to work with somebody who's done it, and one person will show the next person. Here's some tricks of the trade. Here's how you do it. Here's how you go uphill on uneven ground. Here's how you set the post when you hit rocks. Here's how you cover a water gap, meaning you've got a stream that goes through the fence. How do you keep the stream from getting logs in there and leaves and getting so much water behind that block of leaves and twigs and logs? How do you prevent the fence from not coming down? How do you do that? I've got another example I'd like to share with you. I've got it in my hand right now. I'll tell you about it when we come back from the break. Guineith Isaacs is with us. Class, I'd like you to consider subscribing to Guineith Isaacs' Gentleman of Fortune. I have, Rich Shealy has, and some others have. And it's $10 a month if you'd like to do that. And just go to USAPrepares.com, and you'll see on page 1 the link. I have an announcement to make. I want to thank all of you who have sent me emails with your suggestions for raising funds to cover the cost of the satellite uplink at Genesis Communications Network. So here's my decision. I've read all the suggestions, and there will be no Plan Z, none. We will not be participating. I sent an email to Genesis Communications Network yesterday that we will not be participating in the satellite affiliate uplink that will cost us $500 a month because I can't afford it. I cannot do it. I cannot take the money from the farm, which is barely afloat right now, to volunteer to be on the radio. But I will continue to be on the radio. We have no plans of leaving the broadcast. We will still be on Genesis Communications Network, but not with satellite links to our affiliates. Affiliates are radio stations that pick up our feed. So GCN is working with our affiliates to figure out what they're going to do, whether they're going to not carry our broadcast anymore or whether they'll find a workaround. There are workarounds that are free. It's just a question of whether the radio stations want to do it or not. So here's what we're going to be doing. You can listen to us several ways. You can listen to gcnlive.com. You can click on Listen Live. You can click on the podcast. You can use the telephone listen line, which I announce every day. And you can go to the archives, all of that on GCN. Or you can go to Republic Broadcasting Network and use the Listen button. You can click on the podcast. You can use their telephone listen line, and you can use their archives. Or you can go to the Ron Gibson, Gibson channel, Ron Gibson, on YouTube. And you can listen there right on the internet anytime you want. But it will be 1 hour delayed from the live broadcast. So that is the news. So I will not be begging for dollars. There will be no PayPal donate button on USA Prepares. And we have no, and because I give away our ads anyway, I've asked GCN to strip out the commercials that I own. So I own 6 minutes of commercials per 2 hours of broadcast, 3 minutes per broadcast. I've asked them to strip them out and give us more talk time. So I'm giving up all the commercials so we can have more talk time. I think it's a thing we should do. And we're going to continue, but we will not have the satellite link to the affiliates. So that's where we're parked. Now, I think that was pretty clear. So I have in my hands a plastic bag with a single lever faucet control. So if you have a kitchen sink and it's dripping and you want to replace the cartridge to stop it from leaking, how many people do you know would be able to open this plastic bag and install it? Never having done it before. How many people do you know? And I'll bet you many of you can do it. But I'll bet you many of the people whom you know wouldn't know what to do with it. First of all, they'd look at it and say, what is it? Not knowing. Yeah. Not ever having seen one before. So how many people would dare to try to replace this drop-in cartridge in their single-lever faucet in their kitchen. How many people? That's what we're talking about. That's how bad things have gotten. And that's nothing compared to the complexity of a transmission control computer or a limp mode problem or a diesel engine limp mode problem. Guineith?
Yeah, so you basically unscrew it, take the old cartridge out, put the new cartridge in, and do up the bolt.
There you go.
That would be my guess.
That's it. Sight unseen. Guineith solved it. Yeah, that's it.
Yep.
It's as simple as that. Now, the only thing that she didn't say is you need you need an Allen wrench, and she's never seen one. So you undo the little bolt or screw or machine screw with an Allen wrench. There you have it. Guineith, thanks so much for being with us, class. Please visit USA Prepares and consider clicking on the link to subscribe to Gentlemen of Fortune. It's brilliant. Thank you, Guineith.